Welcome to the 64th edition of Women's Wrestling Weekly, the show. I am Kyle Klingman along with Scott Beck. Scott, I am still buzzing from the NWCA National Duels, not just 2026 either. I'm buzzing from 2020. They canceled in 2021, so I'm not buzzing from that. 22, 23, 24, probably not 25. That was, I don't want to say a letdown, but that was domination by Iowa in life, so it maybe wasn't the buzz as the other years, but I'm definitely buzzing from 2026. What a tournament. And then we get the ultimate tiebreaker in Life versus North Central, which we will talk about. But let's do some housekeeping. Let's talk about a few things we need to take care of. Number one of my favorite things that I mentioned last show that happened was just watching the Iowa staff in the corner, the respect they showed, them giving a hand, clapping their hands. Sylvia Sterner said, I found the footage of that. So I said I was hoping I could get some footage of Gary. She went on this scouting mission. If I want to hire a private investigator, I'm hiring Sylvia Sterner, who is Sarah Sterner's mom. Of course, we've talked about Sarah quite a bit. She's a national finalist, but she found a camera angle from one of the other mats and said, you can find it here. So she gave me the mat number. And then she found another
Yes.
person who did a social media highlight and it showed them clearly. So we're going to overlay that, of course, and show you that. But Sylvia Sterner, you get a gold star for this show because you did a great job of finding that.
I'll tell you, you say Sarah Sterner's mom. So the mom's a detective, but Sarah Sterner, I will just, since the name came up, and you and I had talked about it, I think she looks really good down at 124. She's wrestling very well. Um, just great arm spin, great nasty lefty headlock. So I think she's having a really good year so far, and she looks really sharp, and I think she's feeling it.
And be sure to stick around for the end of this show. So we're going to do our normal show as is. And then we have special guest Dan Gable coming on the show to discuss women's wrestling. We dive into a lot of topics about the roots of wrestling and his initial thoughts on women's wrestling, how it's helped wrestling as a whole. So we have about 30 minutes with Dan Gable that we will add on to this show. So be sure to stick around for that. Of course, Dan Gable, 15-time NCAA championship coach, 1972 Olympic gold medalist, two-time NCAA champion, lost his last match in college, went through high school and college undefeated, and of course he lost to Larry Owings the 1970 NCAA championship. So iconic story, iconic wrestler. We have him on the show.
Coach Gable is absolute legend in the sport. Anybody that I knew that grew up wrestling in the late 70s, early 80s, it was just iconic, larger than life pioneer in the sport.
I love this comment that we got on YouTube. Here's the comment, and it says, you guys should have named this episode, meaning the last episode, just the NCAA National Duels. Your disrespect of NAIA horrible. Little mention of the NAIA teams. Women's wrestling was championed by NAIA, only to be ignored. Horrible. I like this comment because it allows us to address how we cover information and what information goes into a show, what kind of information gets covered week to week. So if this was 2022 national duels, I would have said that the NEI would have been the focal point. That was one of those tournaments that you are buzzing because Life beat Campbellsville. It came down to the last match. Peyton Prusson and Michaela Campbell had a 19-14 shootout that would probably spend 10 minutes breaking down and talking about everything that went into it. I remember being there and I watched that match exclusively. I did not watch the King versus McKendree duel at all. I completely ignored it that year because that was the show. From year to year, there are different narratives that are going to happen. This year, it happened to be that Iowa, North Central, McKendree, and then you can add in a couple of the other teams, Grand Valley State and Presbyterian, happened to be the focal point because Iowa has not lost a meet or any type of tournament since they have started 3 seasons ago. So that was the storyline. And you have a great duel in the finals with North Central and McKendree. It's interesting because over the course of doing this, we have been blamed for covering the NAIA too much. I remember there was a prominent dad of an NCAA wrestler that we've mentioned often on this show. He blasted us saying that the NCAA gets too little coverage and we give the NAIA too much coverage. This was a few years ago. We've had people say that we don't like Iowa, that we like Iowa too much. So you really are never going to satisfy everyone. I do agree that the NAIA was the pioneering women's programs. They set the standard, they set the trend. They're on the cutting edge of a lot, having 12 qualifiers. They sanctioned women's wrestling before the NCAA, so they get tons of credit for that. We did mention them in the show. Life dominated. We would have probably mentioned more had the Olympians from William Penn been in the mix this past go round. We would have probably talked about that more since the semifinal duel between William Penn and Life would have been better. But it ebbs and flows. And the thought that just because they're pioneering and this was the original means that they deserve more coverage for one tournament, I think is a mistake. It would be like saying that just because Yale had a team before the University of Iowa means we need to cover them even though they don't have a program. So it ebbs and flows. You're never going to make every single person happy in how you cover any type of tournament or any type of event. But for us, I think, and you can chime in, I felt like Iowa, North Central, McKendree, those were the storylines. That was the blast. And that another year we might cover the NAIA different. You have the floor.
For sure. I mean, I think, first of all, bring on the comments. We're big boys. We can take it. We truly do. I've said this many times. We want to do the best job we can, be as fair as we can. And we were cognizant that we were covering the NCAA a little more or a lot more in this case, because that was where the storyline was. Iowa lost the first match ever. North Central avenged some very difficult losses. They had an underdog team and won. But we covered, and because we took a break and we talked about it, we talked about the NAIA, perhaps not as much as one would have liked. That's an NAIA supporter. And you know, we've done this a little bit. Kyle's done this a long bit, and you can normally see the perspective of the person's what they want based on the comments. So they can hold a mirror up and see, you know, what their view is or who they're supporting. But, you know, at the end of the day, we try to be as fair as we can. And the story really was Iowa losing or North Central winning and in the way they did with some big upsets. And the McKendree match and North Central match both that came down to heavyweight. You know, as to Kyle's point, you know, so let's say the NCAA gets a lot better or there's much better matches. Should there be like a lifetime achievement award and just we only speak about the NAIA because they were the pioneers? So we're going to talk about what we think is action. And if we miss stuff, we apologize. You know, and then we're going to talk a lot about the NAIA as we dissect this NCAA dual meet, which was wonderful, which was actually won by the NCAA. So, you know, we think exceptionally highly of Life. We support the NAIA. There's no specific NCAA agenda. And that's just kind of what it is.
Even last year, I felt like we covered a lot with the NAIA, especially that 131-pound class, which this year it's the NCAA 131-pound class, but it ebbs and flows, and what you have there is different at all times, and you just follow the storyline where it goes. And you don't want to say that Life has been a victim of its own success, but what do you say when you're blasting the competition out of the water? And last year you won by 70 points, and this year you dominate through the national duels again. Like you said, you're missing two of the Olympians from Nigeria and the William Penn duel. If they would have had that, Mia Palumbo's down at 110, and then you have Christina Ogunsandi at 117 instead of Mia Palumbo up a weight. Maybe you're talking about it different and you're spending more time, but it ebbs and flows, and you have a different agenda on what it is week to week and month to month and year to year. So that's my answer to
Yeah, and I'd also add, it's like we certainly would not want to neglect the NIA. I'm very good friends with Lee Miracle. You're very good friends with Ashley Flavin and Christian Flavin. So, among others. So it's not like we have a bias inherently to want to just talk and promote the NCAA. So I think we'll let it rest with that.
Now, going into the ultimate tiebreaker, I don't know if this will ever happen again in the history of women's college wrestling, where you have the NAIA champion, Life University, going against the NCAA champion in North Central. days after the national duels on FloWrestling Night in America. And I think the first thing you have to give credit to is what a venue, what energy, what atmosphere. Life crushed it on that. And if you want to talk about promoting women's wrestling, Life gets an A plus.
That's the first thing I said to you. You know, when we were texting when the match was going on, I'm like, what a great intimate venue with a lot of energy. Life did a great job. Amazing venue. There were some rabid fans. People are into it, and you know, I'm a lover of, you know, obviously in a perfect world. Here we go with the NCAA, but you know, if you go wrestle a packed Carver-Hawkeye or you know, but I like these really intimate venues that have like a real feel to them, an intimate feel, and school spirit, and that was wonderful. And you know, I really commend both coaches, and they didn't know the outcomes. I mean, North Central was, you know, they set up that dual meet, but the idea that we were able and blessed to see the winner of the NCAA versus the winner of the NAI days after the event just happened was absolutely phenomenal.
It almost defies logic that we got that, but we did it. It was a 28-13 win in favor of North Central. Life was only missing one of its starters, and that was Zayna McBride,
National champ.
national champion, and they bumped up Olivia Motley up to 138, who is good at 131. So you have two stars for Life University at 131. You bump up Olivia Motley, and she fell. But if we just want to talk about the match of the duel, it have to be at 131. It was Sarah Savage and Yeely Aycock. Comes down to the wire, and it seems like that's the trend of the national duels. And this dual meet is it comes down to the wire. That came down to the wire with a crazy scramble, and it was won 4-4 by Yeely Aycock.
Sarah Savage looked really good in that match. I said she's looked better lately, you know, getting back to her true form, which is, you know, multiple national runner. They both multiple national runner-ups, I believe, twice.
Correct. Yeah.
I believe.
Two-time
And,
finalist. Yeah.
yeah. And they're both very good. And it was a great match. It was a back and forth match. Sterner, you know, had some great leg attacks, and you know, Aycock is very crafty and she's very good when you're in on her leg. Sterner, Savage finished one of them clean, one of them less clean, and then Aycock got an exposure. She actually recovered, almost got taken down, then got exposure. So exciting match, fun match to watch, and you know, it was good to see them both wrestle well, and I'd love to see that one again.
And then you go up to 145, Bellamere over Jamila McBride, 8-2. Latifa McBride then wins over Taylor Graveman, 11-5. So you have a back and forth there. Rika Busa wins over Shanita Lawson, 2-2. So you have Shanita Lawson, who was the star of the McKendree duel. And then she falls to Busa at 180. And then Caroline Ward, she beats Maddie Welsh 6-1. And then if you want to start out, Maddie Avila won it at 103, 10-0. Kaylani Schufelt, who has looked good over a tough Diana Gonzalez, 13-2. And then Selena Shotwell, 8-1 over Michaela Garcia. And then Sarah Sterner, 10-0 over Anna Kreza. Those are the match scores. Your just overall thoughts on this duel and what it means for the sport.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously great for the sport. Great duel. You know, obviously it hurt, you know, Life to be missing one of the McBrides, the national champion. You know, I think North Central, top to bottom, had a little bit deeper team with less gaps. I thought Shotwell looked really good for Life, you know, and Garcia's improving a lot. Shotwell really controlled that match. You know, Schufelt has looked very good lately. You know, the only match I've seen her where I didn't think she looked good was a Morgan Turner match where she was more passive and the match was taken to her. I just think when she wrestles open with belief and attacks, she's vicious on top. She's got very good leg attacks. So I like to see her wrestle freely. And then I think she's as good as she as she wants to be and thinks she can be. She's very tough. So it's good to see her wrestle. But, you know, and Gonzalez is very tough. But, you know, I think top to bottom, you know, Bellamere looked good against McBride. I think that match can be a lot closer if they wrestle a couple times. But overall, you know, you're missing one of the three McBrides. It definitely hurts. But North Central, I think, just had a more, you know, a slightly solider team and wrestled well and started out, you know, when you start out tech, you know, and then Shotwell came back, you know, with a decision, but then North Central won the next three. So it's like they got taken out of the match a little early, and I think sometimes you can be a victim of that, and it's hard to get the momentum back.
I think we can say definitively because we value duels so much. North Central is now the best duel team in the country, regardless of what happens. You have to have a build up, and this was the build. Won the national duels, beat the NAI championship team. North Central deserves that crown. Put that on their head. They're the best dual meet team.
And until beaten, yes, yeah, absolutely. To come to the tournament, win, go against Life, who's looked great and has a great team, a great coach team, and dominate. I'm going to give. I got to say, with the reason, Joe Norton just done a phenomenal job. Great week for him. I mean, and it's kind of apropos. He beat Life here and won. We'd really probably sucked to beat Iowa and McKendree. Hand Iowa the first loss, and then if you lose, and it could have happened. I don't know what happens. This match, the score looked, dominant 28-13. Wrestling's funny. I'm not convinced you wrestle this match 5 times that the outcomes roll like that. I think it could be a lot closer, not go the other way. But it was their week. It was Joe Norton's week, the girls' week on North Central team. It was just everything fell into place for them.
And it was funny asking Joe about that because when they lost 21-20 in 2024 to Iowa on the activity clock, the famous activity clock point, Joe had the comment to his girls, nobody remembers the national duels. You said when you lost to Iowa on that activity clock in 2024, you said nobody cares about the national duels. Have you changed that? Do people care?
I still think the national tournament's the most important thing, but this was a monkey on our back, and we just chucked it off. Yeah, it's really, really important. I think that was our way at the time of building the girls up in that moment and keeping them motivated. Yeah, there's still more to accomplish. This was the mid-season goal. We still have an end-season goal. But this is really important to show these women no scholarships, none of that stuff. All the money, all the resources, like hard work, believing in yourself, resiliency, great coaching, great team, synergy. Those things matter.
This does mean something. This is a championship. And absolutely. I want us to drive that home. And this matters. Winning the national duels matters. It's a huge deal. It's a different format of a tournament. It's the 10 versus 10 we keep talking about, keep harping on, but this is so important, so special, and this is what motivates us and keeps driving the sport forward.
Absolutely. I think it was phenomenal and a great couple of weeks of women's wrestling. And, I will just, as a fan, a supporter, a father, this product, I know we keep saying this, but it's just facts. It just keeps getting better and better. And I'm not just talking, and I've said this too, it's not just the best, the top to bottom, the middle tier people that lose, it's just they're getting better. They're wrestling better, and it's just going to keep happening. Maybe we will catch Japan at some point. I don't think it's in a year or 2 or 5, but at some point, if we keep improving like this, we will. And have the participation in the numbers, at the very least, and we say this a lot too, most of the people that wrestle in college, their goals perhaps are just to enjoy the sport. Wrestle in college, they're not going to be world Olympic champs. It's borderline impossible to do that. But this sport builds character. It's a great experience. Some of my best friends are still guys that wrestled with. One of my buddies, my roommate at Harvard, just came to my house this weekend. Talked a lot of wrestling. Wrestling builds character, makes you a better person. Yeah, it can be miserable and it can suck, but it does really good things to people.
And as we talk about North Central being the best dual team, Iowa and McKendree have damn good tournament teams. You look at those teams on paper, it is scary what they have for tournament power. It's not that North Central will not be in contention, but you look at the tournament scoring and that tech fall is tech fall. It's not like if you win 15-5 that the other team gets a point. It's just that tech fall. It's different when you go to the tournament format. And on paper, when you look at McKendree, what they have built, you look at Iowa, what they have built, those two teams have a lot of firepower coming at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, if you do the math and really look at it, it's going to be hard to beat Iowa or McKendree. They're just so solid and have, big point scorers.
Lehigh wrestles Iowa in Carver-Hawkeye Arena. It was a blowout for Iowa. They won 8 of 10 matches. 37-7. Expected. You had three really good wrestlers for Lehigh. At 117, Abby Cooper got up 7-0, and Harley Hiller hit a headlock and got the fall. So that skewed the score a little bit, but even if you do the math on that, it's still going to be a blowout. You win 7 of 10 matches, even if it goes the other way. Winning in Carver is so hard, and there's not a spot in the world that feels like going into that atmosphere and trying to win a match against the crowd, against that arena. So it's like no other. It's different than the Olympic Games. It's different than going to a random tournament overseas. You go into that hornet's nest, it's hard to come away with a win. And I don't care who you are. There's just pressure that's like no other going into that arena.
Kyle, I mean, you can list way better than I as a historian, but I mean, I can remember seeing Mark Hall lose to I think it was Marinelli or Cameron. I mean, we have seen over history, there have been wrestlers that are ranked so much higher, national champions, people that have lost to Hawkeye wrestlers at home that you were stunners, based on accolades. So the best of them have had trouble there. It's a tough environment, but unfortunately for Cooper, she was up 7-0 loss. Jimenez took care of business. And you got to talk about Crazer. I mean, who hasn't she beat this year? She beat Hui from Norway, world medalist, Tog from Mongolia, world medalist, took out Brenda Reyna, Michaela Beck, Alexis Yanyak. She just took out Carly Brooks, who I just said last show has been looking really good. She took her out. I guess she got headlocked for 4, but has won in dominant fashion by 9. So right now, Crazer's on a mission and can pretty much compete with anybody for sure.
And the one thing she does exceedingly well is when she gets to a takedown, she is thinking takedown to lace immediately. And that's not just something you say, I'd like to work on that this week and let's make it happen. It takes repetition. It takes a mentality. And when you know that as the opponent, that's scary because you know that's coming and you have to attempt to defend against it. And it's easier said than done.
Well, number one, especially if it's a good lace, and the good lacers can lace from many different positions, and they can adjust, tighten, and go right into it. I mean, and the natural thing is it's natural to, like, if you get taken down, especially in a takedown, maybe you shouldn't have, or maybe you were winning the position, you blew it. There's that like quarter to half second of pouting, or like, I got taken down. If you don't go right in transitional parterre defense, it's over. Once somebody locks up the gut, a good gutter, a good lacer starts to get the lock, it's too late. You cannot pout. You have to have a very short memory, wrestling, and go on and immediately transition. Just like we always say, transition, take down, to turn on top. The transition is equally important in parterre defense.
For her coming out of that, because it got tense there, she got headlocked, and you get in a situation, and she scored at the end of periods, which was to her credit. So that's huge, and you saw that with the Mitchell Messenbrink match. If you watch the Iowa versus Penn State, is that he's scoring at the end of periods, because if you just think 10 seconds left, I'm just going to let it ride one way or the other. If you can take those opportunities, that's just going to separate you, and it plants doubt in someone else's head too that, I got to be ready to wrestle a full 6-minute match.
Yeah, and it's very demoralizing if you wrestle a good period. Let's say you're winning, or you're barely losing, or it's tied, and all of a sudden, with 8 seconds left, you have a mental lapse, let up, and then you give up a takedown to turn, and then you go into your corner pissed off, and you're not really thinking. You're mad. You have to then control those emotions. So it's very demoralizing to give up points at the end of the period, for sure.
Scott, what are we going to do on this 103-pound dilemma that 3 teams have right now? Iowa has the biggest dilemma. They have 3 national championship caliber wrestlers. We've talked about it on the show numerous times. You have Val Solorio, who was at 110 last year, didn't make the postseason, moved down to 103 and is competing for that spot. She is in the lead right now. She has 3 wins over Sterling Diaz, and then she has wins over Rhiannon Murphy. She should be in the lead right now. She's number 1 in the FloWrestling rankings. McKendree has a situation, although I think they're going to navigate it through redshirt. You have Heather Kroll and Katie Valdez. Valdez just beat Kroll at the Missouri Baptist. So if you want to say who's the front runner there, it may be Katie Valdez. And then at North Central, you have a returning national champion, three-time All-American in Maddie Avila. She is probably behind Bree Graves at this point. So you have four wrestlers who are going to be sitting in the stands that could be competing for national championship, and only three of those seven will be at the NCAA championships. So when you look back at this, the Missouri Valley Open was tougher than the NCAA championships at 103 pounds. No doubt about it.
That's crazy. I'm just glad. My comment would be, I'm glad I don't have to make these decisions, and they're hard decisions because a lot goes into it. You look at wrestle-offs, you look at head-to-head, you look at if somebody's got a red shirt, you look at health, injuries. It's very hard, and you can't make everybody happy. I think the most important thing is that the athletes know or have some idea of how they're going to be chosen. Are we going to do the, and a lot of coaches aren't going to say that. They're just going to make a last-second decision. I think it's better, but I'm not a coach, so I don't, and it's not for me to say, but if I was the athlete, I'd like to at least know what I need to do to make the team. But it's very challenging because an athlete can win the wrestle-off, but maybe not match up as well to the other top people in the weight class. So these are very difficult decisions for the coaches.
And with Iowa, it's unique because this is unprecedented, probably in the history of college wrestling, men or women, that you have three quality wrestlers vying for one spot. So if you are Clarissa Chun, and that's what's interesting about Iowa, is that I never think of Iowa as just Clarissa Chun. I always think of Clarissa, Gary, and Tanya. Clarissa, Gary, and Tanya. Whereas North Central, I usually just think of Joe Norton. Now there's others involved in the program, no doubt about it, but it feels like Jay Robinson called it that Joe's more of the benevolent dictator, that it's, it's probably Joe making the ultimate decision on that. Whereas I think it's maybe more of a committee decision with Iowa at this point. But I think with Iowa, you have two returning All-Americans. Val Solorio is not. You're probably thinking, we want to give those returning All-Americans every single opportunity to try to make this team, even though Val is the front runner at this point. And if you go back to a Gable principle, it's coach's decision. Whether you have these wrestle-offs or one beats the other, you have to probably just say, it's my decision. I'm the one running this show, and this is who I'm going to pick, regardless of any of the results.
But that's tough. It creates, certain athletes could feel resentment. Ultimately, it is a coach's decision, and because the responsibility for the program and the results are on them. So if it's going to be on them as the coach, then they should make the decision. But I like the concept of the athletes having some clue what goes into it. But who knows? I mean, the concept, like, if Sterling Diaz, she's like a cadet world champion, I believe, right? I mean, silver. I'm sorry, but the idea that she, this is who you're leaving off potentially, the team. But it's just, I mean, other people would say these are good problems, but I would suspect moving forward, now that we know it's one per weight, like in the NCAA, there will be less recruiting of such depth in each weight, hammer-wise.
I think Alexio at this point has the easiest decision because he can redshirt Katie Valdez if he wants to. Now, where it could get difficult is if he says, Valdez is really pulled away at this point. We want to win the national tournament, the very first one, and McKendree could say that we're the first NCAA women's champion, and we think Katie Valdez can lead us to that gold trophy, then maybe he goes that route. But at this point, he probably is in the best position or the pole position of those three coaches because he can redshirt Katie Valdez if he wants to, because Heather Kroll, as we know, is really good.
She's great.
She is. Yeah. And so you have great options there too. So if I was in a position to just have the privilege, I would rather be Alexio at this point because I think he has the best decision, maybe not the easiest.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that in his mind, obviously it seems as if Valdez is pulled away, but I would I'd want to go for it this year. I'd want to put the absolute best line. If I'm him, I mean, I just think they have a shot. You know, they have depth. They have a shot. It's the first NCAA. You know, they may never get the shot again. Maybe where they can beat. Who knows? So you know, I think you want to put your best team out there. You know, whatever that is. Maybe you know he actually thinks Crows, but whatever it is. But I think you want to put your best team out there.
Another Gable principle, you win now. If you have the opportunity, you pull every stop out to win now. You have Cam Guerin for one more season. You have this loaded lineup. You have Tristan Kelly. You pull out every single stop because it may never happen again. And then you know you have Everest Leydecker coming in to Iowa next season.
Yeah.
3 hammers there. So you win now.
You never know where you get the chance again for anything in life, right? So sometimes you worry about next year. I know people want to plan. And listen, you know, is Cam Guerin at the moment back to her top form? No, but she looked pretty good and she's dangerous as hell. She's won 4 she's won 4 titles. They were NCAA. She's won 4 national titles. She's made age group world teams. She can beat anybody. She can win another national title for sure. And with 31 is an exceptionally deep weight class, but Cam absolutely can win that weight class. So you need to just go for it, I think.
And regardless of anything, you have favorites as a coach, and you're going through emotions as you go through this, just like we have favorites. It's impossible not to, just like we talked about at the beginning, where you favor NCAA at some levels and then you NAI and whatever it is. But you have natural inherent biases. And so you try to keep yourself out of that. You try to look at everything. But I think the coach's decision philosophy, where you just establish it up front and say, it's my decision. I'm going to put the person that I feel is the best to win an NCAA championship. And that's what I'm going to have to do.
Yeah. And I would also add, I think wrestling is, for the most part, a meritocracy. And being a favorite is normally earned by the way the athletes compose themselves on and off the mat every day in practice, who's working the hardest, who's doing the right things, who's a good teammate, who's leading by example, who puts in the extra work, who, you know, isn't getting into any academic trouble, any side issues, shenanigans, you know, distractions. I think you earn being a favorite for the most part.
And I like what you said there, because you had mentioned just the value of wrestling and the academic piece. Ava Bayless, who's a national champion at 110, and they have a decision there at 110 with the Nyla Valencia. Ava Bayless and Emily Gonzalez is back. So you have 2 national champions there for Iowa. And the front runner is probably Nyla Valencia, who's been injured the last 2 seasons. So imagine what they have to do at 110. But this is going to be Ava Bayless's last season. She's going to move on academically. What a great family they have, but what a great person she is, and just a representation of the sport. I don't know that it gets better than Ava Bayless and what she's done, and just saw some comments about academics and how she values academics. She is really the model for what you want a wrestler to look like, as Ava Bayless.
Yeah, I don't really know her, but I trust your judgment. Yes. So she's won a national title. She's, you know, had this experience of being on this team, and whether she keeps wrestling or not after, all the things she's gone through for wrestling will serve her very well in her life, I'm sure.
Real American Freestyle. We got a matchup that I know is going to excite Scott D. Beck, and that is Lucia Yepez from Ecuador against Everest Leydecker. This is going to be a fun one. I'm glad we got this RAF matchup. There's been some good ones, but I think this probably, in the short history of RAF, this is probably going to be the best one, or the most intriguing one up to this point.
The shame is most people that follow just men's wrestling won't even realize what match is being presented. I commend Izzy to set this one up. This is going to be interesting because Yepez Guzman is exceptionally good. She's an Olympic medalist, world silver medalist, U23 world champ, I believe. And she's very explosive, and she's a woman. She's physical. She's strong. She scored 7 points in Fujinami to start a match. I think Leydecker is going to this match thinking, believing, and expecting to win. And she doesn't shy away from competition. I've talked to her right before big matches. I know what the mindset is of her father or coaches, and she's going to be ready. Now, will she win? Is she ready for this level? I mean, she beat pretty tough people before, walk through junior worlds. Guzman's really tough. This is an intriguing match to me. They're both very good. And I want to see if Leydecker can handle the physicality, but she wrestles with physical people in practice, my daughter among them, so this is going to be a great match. And another thing to be excited for. So we've been throwing some good bones in wrestling where we had these things dangle out that are really exciting. And this is going to it's intriguing.
Scott, there is a job opening at USA Wrestling for assistant women's national team coach. Sarah Hildebrandt is no longer in that role. We have to assume that means she is going to compete again. And this leads to something I always think anytime someone announces a retirement is we will see. When someone puts shoes on the mat, I roll my eyes like, yeah, okay, 50-50 that this is going to happen. It's easy to step away for a while, think this is the path you want to go down, but once it gets real, it's hard to leave that competition behind.
I think also in Sarah's case, she'd won multiple world medals and an Olympic medal before, and I think the natural thing you kind of almost say is like, I just won Olympic gold medal. I just hit the pinnacle. I'm done. You can't go out any better, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of people that do this, as much as they hate it at times and it's torture, they love it. And it's hard to walk away. And maybe sometimes you just feel you're not ready yet. And, if you're still good and you love it and you love competition, why not? And as I said, we talked about Helen, it's not for anybody to tell Helen or Sarah what they should do, or it's a very personal thing. I truly believe in her head, she thought, okay, I just won an Olympic gold medal. I'm going to coach. I'm going to, give back help. But I just think there's still hunger, and she just wants to do it.
I love it because why not wring your athletic prime dry? Just see every ounce of that go out and see if you have it. Now, she won't be at 50 kilos. She'll probably be at, I would assume, 53 or 55. But I'm glad she's going forward with this.
And the irony is, to be completely honest with you, if she chooses, I have no idea what weight she's going to go. I would assume 53 or 5, and she'll have to cut weight for both of them. But 53 is an easier weight internationally than 50. It's just, and it was a big cut for her. 50 was a ridiculous cut for Sarah, and so maybe she first starts at 55, or maybe she wrestles a little bit 57 and drops. I don't know. I don't think it's about. I think it's about the love of the sport and just having that competitive nature. I mean, she's a competitive person, and I think it's good for Team USA having, Sarah in any of those weights, So, who knows what she'll ultimately do, but clearly she tried and it wasn't giving her what she thought it would at this period of time. It doesn't mean it may not down the road.
Again, we're assuming she will come back at one of those weights, 53 or 55. But with Fujinami moving up to 57, now you're clear of that landmine. So you have, I don't want to say it's wide open because 53 is a tough weight class, but I think her mind, if you think I was the best at 50 and cut hard there, I could be effective at 53 or 55. I think she's that good. And I love thinking of going into 2028 with Sarah Hildebrandt if she goes that far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anybody, and obviously whoever Japan puts at 53 or 55, whether it's ultimately Akuno or Kyuko gets a spot, or or Makita or a spot. Sarah, I'm sure believes that she can beat them. I mean, she lost to Akuno, but that was a long time ago, and Sarah's a different Sarah, and she's also Sarah with an Olympic gold medal, and you can't tell me that doesn't give you just a little more confidence, So, I mean, it also makes people come for you. But I think whatever weight she goes, she would. If she did not think that she can beat anybody in the world at any of the weight class she could be, I don't think she'd be doing this. She's not doing this to try to take another, world bronze medal or Olympic bronze medal.
Final thing before we get to Dan Gable, Bridgette Duty was the only American to be selected for the Indian Pro League. So this is back. If you remember way back, that's where Helen Maroulis got Punja Donda. She remembers. Yep.
I remember.
In the Indian Pro League, I believe in 2017 it was, or 2018.
18, I think.
Yeah, early 2018.
And then Donda beat Helen again, I think. I think Donda has beaten her twice, but the first time in the Pro League. I think it was 2 times, but
yeah. So we'll do our best to follow that. I looked at some results. It was hard to find. I saw some just general team results, but I'm glad Bridgette Duty is doing that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, listen, Bridgette Duty is very tough and wrestles kind of an unorthodox style. She's really, really strong. If somebody is better than her, she couldn't care less, and she's going to just go at it. So if you wrestle Bridgette Duty, you feel like saying, like, just please, I'm winning, stop, but there's no stopping. She's a fierce competitor. And if you look, she's had some very good wins in her career, and good accomplishments. I remember the craziest Bridgette Duty match. I think it was a 2021 Olympic trials in Fort Worth, Texas. She had this crazy match against Mota Pettis. I think it was like a 13-12, 14-13 ending that Mota Pettis won. But Mota Pettis at that time was really wrestling well. She had pinned Allie Reagan. She was beating people. She was really, she's always tough, but she was flavor of the month, and she was a big name, and Duty gave her everything she could handle. And I think Mota Pettis had it a late 4 to win that one, but a phenomenal. If you ever get a chance to watch that one, if somebody hasn't, that's a crazy match.
Stick around for the conversation with Dan Gable. Dan Gable, 15-time NCAA championship coach, 21 consecutive Big Ten team titles, 9 NCAA championships in a row as the head coach at Iowa, 1972 Olympic gold medalist, Presidential Medal of Freedom winner. Stick around. Dan Gable is next. Dan, when you look back at your career, what were your initial thoughts on women's wrestling? Because it's been a roller coaster a little bit. And just go back to a comment that Terry Steiner made, that he said that he thought he wasn't supposed to like it, and his parents didn't think he should like it when he was applying for the USA Wrestling job. What were your initial feelings?
Oh, I don't think I ever had those feelings where that I'm not supposed to like it. But I do agree that there were probably feelings that, I don't think it's going to work, or how's it going to work? And, I never thought about it as a big time helper for our sport. And if I would have thought about it at that particular moment, a big time helper, I would have always been on board. Doesn't mean I wasn't on board, but I probably was worrying about the guys on my team and, who doing this and doing that. And because of that, I probably didn't spend a whole lot of time just saying, wow, this is what we need. Because that's kind of what it has turned out to be, an enhancement of our sport and a chance to help develop people of a different gender, some qualities that maybe I didn't think that they needed or should have, or whatever it was, because it's so physical and it's so you work so hard, to really be good at this. You just usually don't walk off the street and jump into a wrestling room and turn out good. I mean, there's a few males that I've seen do that, but by the time when they got done, they've had to go through a lot too. But just they had an edge. So, I probably didn't spend as much time on the development of our total sport as I spent on the development of the University of Iowa Hawkeyes or the Cyclones when I was there, or the Wallhawks when I was at West Waterloo. And girls were probably not on my mind as much.
How instrumental has women's wrestling been to the advancement of wrestling on the whole?
Very instrumental, if you want to use that word. I'm a little concerned about why it goes in spurts, or it happens to jump really good, and it might be the leading sport at the high school level as far as jumps in this number of programs. But all of a sudden we hit a curve, and I'm more concerned about those curves than I am about some other things. And I think it happens, and it happens because just it's what's happening in the world right now. There's people that are thinking one way, and then there's people that are thinking another way. Now, I'm not against fairly together thinking, but when it's extremes, and so we have that. And so because of the extremes, it slows the process down. Whereas right now, I mean, we should be having almost the top 50 D1 programs having girls wrestling. We should be having it. And and we don't have that. And we were on the track at one time, I believe, of having that. That's how instrumental they were. But it's certainly something that now that I have two granddaughters in the sport in high school, I have a lot of feelings about whether it's good or not so good. Well, the feelings are it's good. It doesn't mean they can just jump in the sport and do well. They got to learn like everybody else. I mean, there's some talented boys and men that can just come out for the sport and do okay. There might be a few girls that can do that, but I have a feeling that from what I've been witnessing, that it takes a little time. But by that, I mean, they can do it, and they can do it well. And they have proved that. And I see it right in my two granddaughters. Now, that's not their sport, and they're in it 2 months, 2.5 months a year, and then they go to another sport, then they go to another sport. But in those 2 months, I probably see a huge difference in the last part of the training time. By that, I'm saying if it's 2.5 months long, the last 3 weeks or a month, they're just starting to get good. They're just starting to get good. And then they stop, and then they start over with other sports. And the ones that they really do well in are the ones that they keep doing year round, even though they have another sport. They go from that one sport to maybe back to the sport they really like, or they're successful with, or somebody's influencing them that they should do that. So I notice the stance. I notice the penetration. I notice a lot of skills that all of a sudden start happening, hand fighting skills that aren't there when you only wrestle, 2 months a year, as compared to, maybe the guys or maybe some girls that are wrestling full time, which I'm not going to recommend that. It's up to each individual what they want to do and to focus on it. But it does show me that there is a lot to learn, and that they can learn that, and they can do that, but it takes a little time, just like anything else.
As you know, girls' high school is folk style, college is freestyle. What are your thoughts on having high school be freestyle, since that is what you will wrestle in college?
Yeah. Well, I'm a little different than what probably the leaders of the sport at USA Wrestling are probably going to say. And the reason why I say that is that I think we got enough issues just attracting people to matches across the board with one style. But I think the key is I see in between the difference between scholastic and freestyle is that a combination wrestler that does both has more opportunities to learn more positions. And with that in mind, you're a better wrestler. I think if you know how to escape, you know how to finish takedowns. If you know how to escape, you know how to counter takedowns. You know how to scramble. And you're not going to learn that except for on your feet somewhat. And on your feet is basically a combination of escaping and reversing. And I don't think that's even a thought in the majority of wrestlers in the freestyle or Greco-Roman, where you defense and you stay on the bottom and you just try to keep them getting turned. You're not learning positions and maneuvers that make you a better scrambler wrestler, especially when you're on your feet. So somebody shoots on you. If you're a good escaper and if you're a good reversal guy or a girl, you're going to scramble well. But if you don't know those moves, if you don't know sit-outs, switches, side rolls, I mean, Ben Peterson side rolled one of the best Russians of all time in the Olympics. Put him on his back. But it's like you won't learn that scrambling except for just on standing wrestling somewhat. But when you're on the bottom, there's so many skills that you can learn. So I think what I would say that for the wrestler that's going to be full time, you need both styles, because you're not doing other sports a lot of times, and you need a little break from one style to the other. And guess what? I think high school style shows you positions that you'll never get into in freestyle, and freestyle does the same thing too. So I like it. I like it both. I like it both. And for the committed people like me, I got a challenge to get more excited a little bit, because I'm still wrestling, but I got a little different style. In fact, I did a lot of Greco-Roman. In fact, I did a lot of judo. In fact, I did some sambo, which we don't even do. But I was watching, and some people were hitting these moves, and I pick it up. So it kept me excited, kept me learning. It kept me becoming better in certain positions that no wrestlers would ever get in. I mean, you're not going to hit a Granby roll if you're just a freestyle wrestler or a Greco-Roman wrestler. Why would you hit a Granby roll? Because you're going to lose points. So you don't even know what a Granby roll is. Well, I know what a Granby roll is. And I know that sometimes in Granbys, you don't have to actually, you can end up in different types of situations where you can end up with a reversal and have a guy on his back or a girl on his back, her back. So I think I know more wrestling than a freestyle wrestler knows by far, if that's what I choose to do. Now, if you're just going to, if you need to learn something quickly, the less the better. But to me, it's the more the better. And I'm still learning wrestling. And if I was still competing, if you stay healthier, which you don't, because as you get older, you age. But by now, if I could have stayed in the sport, I'd be shooting head to outsides to one side. I'd be shooting heads to outside the other side, which I did, but I was better on one side than the other. I'd be shooting sweep singles to one side. I'd be shooting sweep singles to the other side. But I was better. By now, I'd be great with both sides. I used to have a left-handed headlock. Well, I used to hit a right-handed headlock once in a while. But you know what? If I stayed the way, if you stayed young all your life and you had all these things to learn, you wouldn't get bored because you got something else you can do from the other side of your body. And people that gut wrench, usually gut wrench from one side better than the other. Well, if I stay in the sport, I'll learn to gut wrench both sides. And it's just like scholastic and freestyle. They're both fairly similar. But you got to know which one you're wrestling when you're doing it, because, and that's the thing, sometimes you might naturally do something which, whoa, shouldn't have done it in this one. I like scholastic wrestling. I like freestyle wrestling. I like Greco-Roman wrestling. And so, you know what? A committed person needs that for motivation. Even though I don't think you do run out of holes, no matter what sport, no matter what style, just because there's two sides to everything you do. So it's like me right now. I'm a right-handed writer. Well, how good am I left-handed? Well, if I worked at it and wanted to be, I'd probably be just as good as my right hand, but it's going to take me time. So that's just an example.
What have you learned, especially through your granddaughter's wrestling? What have you learned that's unique about the women's wrestling process, about how they develop, how you get them to the next level? What kind of things have you gleaned from that experience?
I'm just learning. I'm a beginner, even though I've been going at it for 3 or 4 years. But I'm a beginner. What I learned was girls giggle more than guys. I learned that. If somebody blows me off my feet on a takedown, I'm probably not going to giggle. I'm going to probably be concerned. And I think they are concerned, but they giggle a little bit. And I think it's the novice with this sport when they first start. They just aren't used to it, the physicality. And especially when they wrestle their brother or their grandson or their cousins. And it's a boy. And the boy's a little bigger. And like it's just, whoa. All of a sudden there's a giggle. There's a laugh. And what are you laughing about? You just got blown off your feet. And they just keep laughing. And so I'm getting them to the point that they're not laughing as much because they're getting better, because they're starting to understand the seriousness of the sport, and it's not just something that you never felt before. They never felt an explosion of their brother taking them down, probably. You know, maybe I could give you another example. One of the granddaughters went out for football in junior high, 7th grade and 8th grade, tackle football. And at first it was like, whoa, this is difficult. But she stuck with it. She started getting good. She became even a starter at that age. And all of a sudden, all her other sports were getting better because of that physicality that she learned in football. I mean, she was becoming better in volleyball. She became more aggressive. When she wrestled, she became better because she was used to more physical type of stuff. And I'm sure along the way, it's not just the physicality, it's the mental development that they have. They feel one thing and then they feel another. And I'm not saying that they should play football. In fact, I think since she played for 2 years, and then maybe when she went to high school, she dropped out. it was going to get dangerous. And why do I say it was going to get dangerous? Because of the physicality of it. You know, you know, her size, the other size on the other side that's tackling her or she's making tackles with. But more than that, the makeup of the body between male and female. You know, we could go someplace there, but we don't need to go too much there. But I would say that I'm okay with girls wrestling guys in practice sometimes, you know, when it's wanted and needed. You know, if you need that. It's just like what I said for the football. There's things to learn. So it's at first like, oh my gosh, that's laughable. This is the difference. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't laughing so much. It was more like not serious yet, but I could tell there was a difference. And then as they continue to go on, there's even becoming some serious types of things where now they're not giggling. Now they're almost crying a little because they got taken down. The defeat of just getting beat, you know, like no matter what you're doing in any sport, or if you get your test back and your test says F or D, you know, there's some, it's not real satisfying. And some people take that stuff really serious. And when you take it real serious, emotions come out. I had a few tears in my eyes when I was an athlete. But not very often. It's kind of as you get older, you get tears there, but it's more like memories. You get memories. But this girl wrestling, this women wrestling is for real. I'm just sorry that we're slowing it down a little bit because of politics a little bit. You know, not, you got to go to court for this, you got to go to court for that. You know, should girls be in with the men? Should men be in with the girls? You know, that type of stuff. And, you know, I'm sorry that has to take place because it does slow us down. Right now, we need a boost. We need a boost again, even though we might be more boosted than anybody. We don't need these complications that slow us down. Yeah, you got to work through things, but most of it's just common sense.
Go back to when you were the head wrestling coach. Do you remember when you felt like Iowa became a global phenomenon? Because everyone knows the Iowa wrestling program. You're largely responsible for getting it to that level. Do you remember a transition where you said, hey, something's clicking right now, and this is why it's happening?
Yeah, I do remember. What was clicking was the new recruits initially. They came in knowing Dan Gable. They came in following and reading about a lot of things that was publicized. And even the ones that were there had probably read and heard, but they already were in their own world as far as what they were doing daily. And so I remember trying to bring them towards me a little more, or the new recruits that came in. And it was difficult. It's difficult to change things, but you don't give up. And so what had to happen was one had to jump aboard at a time, whatever made him jump aboard. And then the second one would jump aboard once you got one. So say for an example, I came into Iowa and one, you know, it was like they weren't the same as Iowa State. They just weren't. They weren't the same as Oklahoma State. They just weren't. I mean, they were a top 20 team, top 15 team sometimes. maybe even a top 10 team, but they weren't in the top 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And it took little by little to get one to come over and bite what you wanted them to bite on, which was basically more serious about the sport, more dedication, more, at that level. If you want to win a national title as an athlete or a world title, and we had to jump their minds. I mean, most of them were there and probably were hoping for being an All-American. And then most of them were probably not even thinking about the Olympic Games. And so you got a whole culture that you have to worry about and work on. And it just wasn't going to happen by preaching. And you had to show how it could happen. And that's why I'm saying when these new recruits came in, they came in under one circumstance. And I didn't want them to develop with the other team members that weren't jumping aboard the new heights, just like yourself, in your business. You know where you're at right now, and you probably have some ideas where you want to be someday. And if you're okay with where you're at, you're probably going to stay and be okay with where you're at. But if you want to become president of a big company, or if you wanted to become more advanced in what you like, you got to have an upgrade in your mentality. And you got to be able to take on new visions. So instead of that All-American vision, it's got to be the NCAA champion vision. In fact, if you're going to get there, you probably got to have a vision of beyond that even. And that's that world championships. That's where USA Wrestling comes in. That's where those wrestling clubs, that's why you keep kids after they graduate, because they have that higher vision. And the ones that don't, they need that. And that's kind of where girl wrestling is, women wrestling is. But it's advanced. I'm surprised. Since I knew I was going to talk about girl wrestling, women wrestling. I'm surprised that there's like some big lapses. It seems once we get going, it seems like it would keep it going. I am very proud of the people that work for USA Wrestling that have had Iowa connections. And female, I mean, Terry Steiner. He said like you said, he never thought he would become the women's coach and win a world title or as a team. But I am surprised that there is some lapses. I mean, we've had some lapses in Iowa wrestling, but I'm not, I'm talking about, you don't go, like if you win something, you wait 15 more years and you got to win it again. I mean, it's good, but I'm talking about maybe Japanese right now, the Japanese for female wrestling. They are consistent. They're consistent year in and year out. And they keep advancing mostly. And if they don't, they go back to work and figure out what it is. So, I think it's probably tougher here than in Japan, because they're known for discipline a lot and all this kind of stuff. And they get something going, you keep it going. I mean, it's just like Penn State, what they got going right now. I mean, my gosh, what do they got on their team? 5, 6, 7 world champions at different age groups. That's tough to beat. But like I said, wouldn't it great to have that opportunity to be the team that steps up, not to the plate, to the mat. But the reason why I say that is because I'm following a lot of baseball. But I am surprised with, that there's some lapses that we don't have to have. But, if you want to talk about lapses, you talk about Greco-Roman. Greco-Roman wrestling. So, freestyle, we haven't had too many lapses in freestyle ever since we've gotten good. And that's the last 50 years or so, or even more than that. I mean, we were good in 1960 at the Olympic Games, but then we weren't so good again until 1972, I think. And you don't need down years. Of course, if you get really good, a down year is second place, right?
Give us your take on the national duels where Division III North Central beat Iowa in the last match. Just give us your take on both sides. On Iowa's side, what they have to do going forward, and then North Central pulling off a big win like that.
It's probably going to be a motivator for both sides, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It's just like where Penn State is in right now. When people that give up and say we can't beat them, adios. You're not going to ever beat them. People that say, "Wow, what are they doing? How are they doing it? What should we do? How can we beat them?" That's what life's all about. It's not being average. It's about wanting to be good. And there's a lot more good in that than there is wanting to be average. So I like that. Illinois has that, but there's something there that somebody's got to figure out that takes them to that next higher level too. And for females, right there, there's 2 colleges right there. What do we got in Iowa? We got Iowa. We got others. We got some other good schools.
Yeah, Wartburg, Simpson.
Yeah, for female, right?
Yeah. Grandview.
But yeah, Grandview. But it's I don't know. Was that the first time they lost?
Yeah, first time ever.
The Hawkeyes?
Yep.
Well, they win a while. I mean, that's pretty good. Sometimes people go a long time without losing, and then they lose, and then they get really good, as far as I'm concerned. But that's my philosophy. And if you just win and think that you're automatically going to win again, you won't. You got to let that be a motivator for you on both sides. That's what competition's all about. That's what I like about interviewing with you, because you're right there on top of things and you pretty much know what's going on. You investigate a lot to find that out. That's why you're talking to me too.